Right, good afternoon everybody. Grab a seat. Come on in, guys. Hey, how you all doing? Great to see you. Thank you so much for basically responding to what was a very short order invitation to come and just catch up with one another and get a bit of the info after what has been a really, really tough week for everyone, really. Those that have got the physical scars on their farms and on their properties, their homes, along with those that have worried for days and days about their nearest and dearest, not able to contact them. That's probably one of the worst things to carry, is it not? So I'm just so glad to see you all here. So today's format is very, very, I keep saying we're building the plane as we go. I think I've got it to the kite stage. Somebody said I've got plastic bags and bamboo sticks. It's maybe I'm just a rubber band. So all of the people that have been around me across this last, well, we're nearly 10 days, aren't we, have been truly outstanding. There are heroes in this room of every type and description. So to all of them, I just really take my hat off to you all. So without further ado, the format for this afternoon is we're going to have some really brief updates from the people who are best able to assist you, the snapshots of information so that you know where to go if you're looking to access some of the support that's available. So on, as I say, it's going to be quite quick. We probably won't do many questions between each speaker, but just know that they're going to be here for quite some time afterwards. We've got an amazing crew out the back there. You'll be able to smell the steak halfway through, and those last speakers are going to want to hurry up because they're going to be standing then between you and a steak and a cold beer. So I'm going to, without any further ado, hand over to our Mayor Rehette, who is probably one of the heroes in the room because she's carried this district, as you all know, for quite some time.
There's definitely no hero in this room. It's everyone in our region that has pulled together. I just want to thank everyone for your patience and your support in the last little while. Our region are hurting. We have about 100 work streams happening at once. I will have to leave you soon because we're dealing with an unfolding situation up the coast, which you will be aware of very soon. There's so much happening, but I'm just here today to thank everyone for their work. This is a civil defence issue, but that means that police, rural support, and I do want to acknowledge Sandra and Rob, who has been at the Civil Defence coordinating on our behalf, helping with some rural support. We had police helping us, we had search and rescue, we had the government coming in, and I do want to acknowledge the Minister, Kiri Allan, who's been on the ground supporting us right from day one, NEMA supporting us. This is an unprecedented event. The type of disruption we have seen in the last 10 days we have not seen before. So I'm just here today to say thank you for your support. We will be catching up after this as well. I do want to ask you any issues, please do come through our rural support team. They are there to help you. They have been coordinating everything rural on our behalf, and we would not have been able to do that without them. So thank you for that. And without further ado now, and there are lots of heroes in this room, just as I'm looking all names, I'm not going to mention names, but later we will be able to catch up over a cuppa. Thank you for being here today. Without further ado, Kiri, I think I'm going to, is that the plan? Yes, I'm handing over. We were clear instruction, short speeches. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much. Kiri, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Hey, cheers, Rhett. And g'day, everyone. Look, I'm pretty short and sharp, so yep. Thanks to everybody for how just teams have held together over the past week. And we've got a long way to go, I think is, in short, my brief message that I think you're all well aware of. Moving forward, as we transition to a recovery phase, that's really all I wanted to have a quick yarn about today. Because, as Rhett said, there's about 100 streams going through. The biggest thing I think that our region doesn't need is a whole heap of barriers and red tape as we stand up and just right now getting cash out door to those businesses that need it is critical. We all know the massive infrastructural issues that are ahead of us, so I won't get into that too much. But look, the reason I just want to really acknowledge you, Sandra. I think you probably had about a day to pull this thing together, so just massive acknowledgement of all the crews that have been pulling people together. The main thing I kind of wanted to talk about with you all this arvo is you're critical to our region. We are basically standing ourselves up as a recovery crew to make sure that sector by sector, it's got to be led sector by sector, industry by industry. What's happening for hort isn't going to work for ag, which isn't going to work for forestry, which isn't going to work for small and medium-sized businesses. We know that, and so I guess I've been going around to all the various sectors and industries within Tairāwhiti over the last few days. Because you're so well established, you've got long established relationships and some really good organisational capacity, there's nobody better to organise yourselves than you. So we're seeing that through rural support, through Whiri farmers, through beef and lamb. Everyone's sort of got a bit of a role to play. As we move forward into the recovery phases, big challenge for us is, the imminent thing, kind of my philosophy to myself at the moment, which I'm saying 100 times a day, is no balls dropped, which means no businesses falling over. So really clearly my focus right now is on our economic recovery response. You'll hear from MPI shortly a little bit about some of the support that we've made available for clean-up, etc., just to kickstart that response. I guess just being we are under no illusion, and reassure you all that we're quite clear of the huge challenges our region faces and what this disruption means for all of our industries in town. So I guess if I can make one little plea to help us all move swiftly is, well, whilst we get stood up, and I know that others will have a bit of a yarn about what that means in terms of getting information through quickly so that we can get cash out the door pretty quickly, is we'll be wanting to make sure, so you're not all having to come down off farm every other day to come to meetings that are taking up time. We want you to be doing what you need to be doing to get yourselves up and running. What I need to know is, what do you need to do that so you don't fall over? And then the next phase will be, what do you need so that we as a region are recovering to an extent that our infrastructure, our capacity here in region lasts for 100 years. Right now, as you all know, biggest challenge is we've got blimmin' critical lifeline pipes going through, bridges built in the early 1900s. It's you'd cry if you didn't laugh. You've got to do one of the two. It's pretty shoddy out there. So we've got some, the way that we'll be sort of setting up, I'll get you guys to talk about how Rural Support Trust and whatnot are doing that. But what we're going to be doing is making sure sector by sector by sector by sector that we've got all the kind of key voices, and we know that there's a massive, there's huge big differences around your needs. What the criteria that we're really trying to develop moving forward to enable that cash flow just to be up and running, we've tried to design a model that's got very few limitations around it to be able to enable businesses to get running. And so, look, we'll have more to say about that in the next couple of days. But all I can say from my end is that I think the better that we have our industries mobilising, organising themselves, feeding through that information straight to whether it's rural support or whomever, I'll let you guys speak to that. But kind of a one sort of stop shop that we can scalp that and be getting cash into bank and getting you up and running as soon as possible. Worst outcome for our region, and this is why I'm stoked to be in region as the response minister, worst thing for our region would be that we have our businesses fall over. Worst thing that we have would be that we've got people on welfare as a consequence of us not being able to capture our businesses and get our economy up and running. So look, I'll leave it there just to say cheers, appreciate how much you're already working with those that are trying to work with you. The quicker we get that information in, bit of a stock take, what your losses are, what your imminent needs are, cash flow, then what your infrastructure needs are going to be, the quicker we can do our job to respond. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions. We'll stick around later for afterwards, but yeah, just in advance, thanks for all that you're doing for our community. Can't do it without you. I've been blown away and brought to tears quite a few times by just the amount of blood, sweat and tears that have gone in by just everyday New Zealanders in our region doing everything they can to help each other out. It's been quite overwhelming, and I'm sure there'll be a time for us all to reflect in due course. But right now, while we're in the trenches, just cheers in advance. We've got a bit of work to go as a region, and from my end, I will be doing absolutely anything and everything in our power to make sure that we're cutting through the red tape to get that imminent needs that you need and constantly be just responding as we go through as a region. So cheers, Steve.
Thanks so much, Kiri. So just a wee bit of housekeeping so that these ladies, because they've got tight deadlines, can get away. So first of all, and probably most importantly, the AMPSO showgrounds facilities, if you need them, are at the far end of the car boots. That's that ablution block down the far end there. So that's the first and most important thing. Now, we have got a couple of things going on this afternoon amongst all the information that we're getting out there, one of which is starting up our wider needs assessment. So that's going to be feeding into all of that you've just heard Kiri talk about. It's going to be informing a lot of her decisions down in Wellington as she fights for us as a region as well. So I'm going to get Matt from Trust Tairāwhiti to come and have a chat with you about what he's got on site here as well for gathering some information and starting to create that bigger picture that we're going to need. And then,
Thanks, Sandra. Kia ora, Matt Cairns from Trust Tairāwhiti. Our role here is just to support Sandra and the Rural Coordination Group, and what they've asked us to do is help with the needs assessment initially. It's key that we have some coordination and we're able to try and draw all the information that decision makers need into one place to be able to, so the Rural Coordination Group can look at all of that. Our Minister and advisors can have a look at that, and regional leaders can look at that as well. So the way that we're planning on doing that is we've set up a basic online survey. We have around a dozen devices just outside here. We've tried to get them at a table each with a little bit of privacy. So if you're able to fill that in before you leave, that would be much appreciated. Otherwise, it is also going to be available online. Preferably, if you do have the time or you are hanging around to chat, if you can take the time to fill it in. Timing is really key, so the earlier we can get that data in, the more informed we are in terms of priorities that the Rural Coordination Group and others can use that data. So Shannon O'Connor from Tonui CoLab, who's been fantastic, has set up a bunch of devices out there. You can, if you've got your own device and just want to do it off your own phone or whatnot, you can just get the link over there and do that too. But as requested, the earlier you can get onto that, the faster we can get an idea of the picture. We've done this a couple of days ago with the Hawk group, and it started to build up a value and an assessment of the needs quite quickly, and their advisory group are now meeting this afternoon to start to triage those and looking at how, on top of the MPI financial support available, how the sector leadership can start to prioritise those in most need and urgent requests first. So that information is quite key. And the other thing that's just been passed around was a attendance register, and that's to make sure that all the updates that are sent out can get to everyone in need, and hopefully within your own contacts, you guys knowing those who aren't here, if you could forward that on and perhaps request that they're added to the database so we can make sure that all the relevant information is getting out to the right people. The other significant and really important reason for the survey being online is that those links can be sent through social media, through emails, so those who are unable to be here can also fill out the information and start to broaden that picture. We've also got, this isn't actually the media recording us up here, it's Rangai Studios locally, so this hui can be cut up a little bit later on, and we can also send a video of this meeting for those who are unable to be here today, so they're able to get that information as well. So thank you very much. I'll hand over to the next speaker.
The only thing I just want to add to what Matt just said there, it sounds like it's real laborious. It's not. It's a quick ass survey that comes back ends into me so that we can get the money into your accounts ASAP. So it's supposed to be the easiest, most streamlined process that we could think of to cut through rounds and rounds of XYZ. We know that cash flow is an imminent issue. So fill the survey in, give us your needs assessment, it'll be assessed pretty quickly, and that's the model that they use down in Kaikoura and Christchurch.
Cool, thanks. And the other example of how we're trying to use this information to be practical and useful really quickly is connecting into MPI, where they're receiving the funding applications. If they can connect into our, I guess, the regional coordination group's triage of what is the most critical, they can bump those applications to the top of the queue. We're just trying to work out the mechanism for that.
Do you need Wi-Fi? Do you need to be able to get online?
Yeah, so there's a couple of business hubs that have been set up. That's why we've got, because most people, we all know connectivity's out. So there's going to be availability for you to be able to get to those, the survey. There's some set up here now. And I think down at Trust Tide After there's another lot set up. And where else have you got them set up, mate?
There is, and up the coast, Midge Takani, one of my colleagues, is working on some business hubs up the coast at the moment. So hopefully there's an announcement of where people can go to up the coast to connect into business hubs and the same sort of survey, Wi-Fi and government agency support.
Probably the only other thing I just want to add there too is that you've got all these agencies here in the room. Now, just to be really clear, the agencies aren't leading the response. This is a community-driven response. It's a sector-driven response. The job here is the back end. It's to collect stuff and get it through to us to be able to cut through, get that funding out the door. But it's not, these guys nobody is trying to get in your way here. So that's been real critical for us. We know that can get really frustrating, going through 1,000 different entry points. That's why we're trying to make it as streamlined as possible, that you have to do the least possible, and then it becomes our problem at the back end to work out how to get that out ASAP.
And the other thing that I am working on is getting it out to those long closed roads, and as you say, those without the Wi-Fi. So we will take the survey to them. Rest assured on that one.
Well, there's people out there that don't even want to check their emails because they've got too much going on.
100%. Yeah.
They won't be here either.
No, we're here.
When the survey's worth real term cash, and that's what we're trying to, that's what we're having this yarn now. So, you guys are the most connected to young people. For anybody that's got cash flow issues, make sure that they're just filling in that form, getting in touch with Sandra or whomever. Some got to get in their trucks and get up there to sit with them, fill them out. That's kind of the agility that we've got to operate right now.
We've just had, we've got community leaders in our catchments. We just go door to door. We'll do it for them.
Yeah.
Hey.
All good. MPI, let's keep this.
Sorry, Sandra, is Wairau going to be included?
Wairau's in Nash's patch, so our kind of cut off here is technically sort of just north of Wairau. So it makes, there's a nice line there, so they go down to the Hawke's Bay.
Okay, so I'm going to deal with Hawke's Bay.
I think there's not many of you in that kind of little area, so we'll deal with you kind of bespoke. My view, and I've just had the same yarn in another industry, is do one form, we can sort it out through the manuals as to how we sort that out. MPI.
Afternoon, everybody. So my name's Peter Ettimer. I'm a director in the Ag and Investment Services branch down in Wellington. So I came up yesterday as part of the response team. MPI is working closely with the Civil Defence and the National Centre of Crisis Management to support you guys on the ground. I'd like to support, just acknowledge Minister, the work you've been doing, and also the Mayor's team and Trust Tairāwhiti. But also just want to acknowledge everything you guys have been through for the last week. We've been hearing some stories the last couple of days that are pretty tough, but you guys have lived that experience. So I just want to acknowledge that and the impact that's had on you as individuals, your family and your whānau and the likes. So just briefly from our side, I'd just like to introduce Alex Wilson as well. So Alex is here on the ground. She's coordinating MPI's part in the response and is working very closely with the Civil Defence team here in Gisborne Tairāwhiti to really identify what needs you guys have, and as the Minister said, to get rid of the blockages and sort stuff out as needed to best support you guys on the ground. Just so in terms of the funding, so on Tuesday, Cabinet made a decision to release $25 million, focused purely for the primary sector in the two regions particularly, recognising that we have 7 regions that have been affected by the cyclone and the previous flooding, and that are still part of the national emergency set up at the moment. But with the funding, so it's 25 mil, so for pastoral farmers, there's 10,000 available, and for horticulturalists, it's up to 40,000. But that is purely just in it to help people on the ground for that initial recovery aspect. The things we're finding for the horticultural sector, for example, is a lot of those blocks have got silt around the trees, and if they can't get the silt off the trees, those trees are dead. So it's at a really initial piece of work, and again, for pastoral farmers, for livestock farmers, potentially around a bit of funding around supporting water reticulation and things. Now, just reiterating what the Minister was saying, I was talking to our funding team last night at 10 o'clock. We had 160 applications. All of those have been paid today. But I was speaking to my team before we came here this afternoon. Some of the things that they're finding is some of the forms aren't being filled out properly. They're not bank account details and things. So to get that money out, we just need to get all those real basic details. And we've got paper forms on the table just to show you what they look like. The link is on the MPI's website. It's a very simple form. It's not asking you to say what the issue is. It's really just saying that you've been part of this event, and that just get this money out and get started. Okay. So we've got a team in Wellington that are triaging these things flat out. There are some questions around some of the eligibility, which we're happy that we've got the team here today. We can take some of those questions, particularly around the 51%, what that means. I was talking to the apiculture beekeepers today about some of their eligibility issues. We can triage those really quickly and get some answers to you as quickly as possible. So that's really, I just wanted to say, but just wanted to acknowledge that, yeah, what you guys have been through for the last, well, not just the last week. Obviously, you had the whole shit happen at the start of the year as well, and some of the previous floods as well. So, yeah. Happy to take any questions. Yeah.
Question around the silt and probably question, Kiri.
Yep.
So the $2,000 payment, is there going to be some flexibility around that? I mean, I've seen growers probably spending that just clearing around vines, but I've also seen growers yesterday spending $30,000 a hectare silt removal.
So look, this is the initial formula for this particular fund. It just get cash and bag to clear out. So hoof it out the door is essentially the mantra at the minute. On those more substantive issues, this is where we come back to the sectors and go, actually, what's the real cost? What are we really dealing with in real terms? So I guess just coming back to that point for us, leading into how coordinated each sector is in region and making sure that us are getting as much up-to-date, adequate information that basically feeds into our next care papers. And I'm writing those things right now myself based on the yarns that we're having in region to get more packages through on the Monday. So that's kind of how real-time the stuff's working.
I'm just going to get Alex, who's in our local office here in MPI, to just introduce her team so that so you get a bit of an idea of who they all are.
Kia ora everyone, I'm Alex Wilson. I've been here since I think Monday afternoon, helping MPI's response set up in this rohe. We have a team set up that consists of the office here, so we have fisheries, animal welfare, forestry. We've got health and safety experts, and we also have multi-business experts. So we've been busy getting out in the last week trying to connect where we can. But please, I'll leave my details if there is an area, if you have any questions or you need some support, we are here. We are rostering, so we're coming on and off, so it's probably less useful to give you names at this stage, but if you come through to me, we'll make sure we can get the right person out to you if you need it. And yeah, just I guess... Oh yeah, we've got a whole bunch sitting outside waiting to help you with filling in those surveys. And yeah, look, they're willing to help as well. So if you want to grab their details and names as well, that's all good. Cool, thanks.
Thanks, Alex.
So while I think tough conversations have been about working with farmers and growers, we're also working with the processing sector as well and logistics sectors. So when we're looking at primary sector, it's farm gate to port, and there's been some discussions around produce going out of New Zealand and some of the quality of that. So we're talking to our exporters as well as in market, particularly for some of the fruit and things. So it's looking at the whole gamut. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that as well.
Excuse me, is this money grants or loans, or what's the story? Have to pay back in the end?
Yeah, they're grants.
Yeah.
They're grants. Okay, so one of the key things that I know most of you will want to know about is our access, because you know, they can have all the conversations they like with people overseas about the quality of our produce, but if we can't get it to the processors, then we've got a problem. So let's talk about roads. Dave Hedfield and his team have done a pair of work over the last 10 days, and he's kindly come to just give us a bit of an update on what our region's roads look like. I mean, obviously, the state highways are no news to anybody because they're just not great. Thanks so much, Dave.
Yeah, thank you. Just before we start, I just want to acknowledge John Coates and the work that he's done for the district, and just publicly acknowledge that. So thank you, John, and for his whānau. Okay, with roads, there's also a lot of ex-mayors and councillors and existing councillors. So welcome. Just with the roading network, look, what we've done, I've put over here, is just the latest update with the roading network. The main issues we've got now is obviously bridges. We've got about 14 out at the moment, and we'll be having discussions with the landowners, because I know that, look, some landowners have started trying to get their access, and look, yeah, totally understandable. And you know, we did have a discussion before that there was concerns that we had people trying to get out of there because the roads were blocked. They were, you know, basically getting onto their tractors and getting through. Look, well done. Okay, we understand. I think there was a fear that council was going to come back with a heavy hammer and try to stop that. The only issue we did have was from the power company, was that there were power downs down, and that's where they had their main concerns. So for the next, our biggest issue now is that, like I said, Rere, Hangaroa. Look, we're working through those bridges. It's still probably going to be another week before we can get access there. I'm hoping we can give you an update. Our website is updated each day. Now, our next phase is just trying to get stock and forestry out. So you'll start seeing parts of the network that are safe. We'll see that. Now, we're working with PGG. They're going to coordinate the stock, and Olsen's are doing the forestry. Look, someone asked me how much this is going to cost. I have no idea. We're still trying to understand it. And that'll be a discussion we'll be coming back to our councillors as well. So, look, at the moment, there's about 80 work crews out at the moment trying to do their best. Look, and just thank you also. I know you've been, some of the silt, you've allowed us to put it onto your properties. You know, thank you. And but there'll be a separate discussion with the bridges, because some people have totally lost their bridge, and we'll be going into a queue of how we're trying to give you immediate access, because we understand you need access for your freight, for your family. So that's about it, Sandra. And like I said, that's the latest update. Help yourself. Yeah, we go from there.
Any very quick questions for Dave while we've got him? No?
Yeah.
Cool.
There you go.
Hey, thank you so much, Dave, and please pass on to your crews that have worked some pretty horrific hours our thanks as a community and a region too. Okay. Okay, so how do we do our best to look after now that we've sort of ascertained that all are safe, albeit that not all are connected, how do we look after our land best, and how do we look after the businesses that we run on that land? So Charles Rao from BDO is going to have a quick word about just filling out some of these applications, accessing this funding from a practical sense.
Thanks, Sandra. We've already heard a bit about MPI's grant. Thanks for that. There are some criteria in the forms that can be a bit confusing. At this stage, I'd just say go ahead and fill it out. Probably the next biggest source of funding, well, I think it's bigger, and probably for most of you, it will probably be the largest and longest term interest-free loan you'll have in relation to this event, is income equalisation. So that's basically getting all of last year's tax paid back, potentially, and potentially not having to pay it back to IRD until, for most of you, probably July 2024. So it's an interest-free loan of that period. So that's income equalisation. You basically have to deposit an amount with inland revenue equal to last year's net income. And you might go, well, I earned a lot of money last year. Well, hopefully you did. A lot of people did, because you're going to need that. And you don't want it with IRD. So what happens with an adverse event like this is you can take it straight back out again. The normal rules get amended. What it does is it pushes the 2022 income into the 2023, or I'd recommend 2024 income year. And so there's probably a 15-month interest-free loan there. So if you earned $500,000 net income last year, you deposit $500,000 with IRD, get it straight back, then you get your tax refunded that you paid for 2022. And you can keep that until your prop tax payment, probably for most of you in July 2024. So that's a 15-month interest-free loan. So you'll probably say, I don't have that bank overhead to make that deposit. I've spoken with all the major banks locally this morning. They've all assured me that giving clients a special loan for that 10 days, that'll probably be at IRD. IRD say up to 20, but our experience is it's 10. Giving all clients access to that funding for 10 days will not be an issue. I've had discussions with IRD nationally yesterday and said, look, if there is interest paid on those loans and we don't know there is, can't IRD refund it the same day? Why do they need 20 days to process it? So they're looking at trying to speed up that and get it back into your bank account, back to the banks as soon as possible. So I had an example of that this morning. I had a client in which decided to do income equalisation for 22 and push it out to 24. I phoned Chris and he approved it straight away verbally. Not an issue. My recommendation is make use of that. The applications have to be done by 30 June, so you got from now until 30 June to open up that past year. Also, IRD have said they will remit interest and penalties for those affected by Cyclone Gabriel that might be suffering interest and penalties on late paid tax, and in extreme cases remit the tax. That's the main assistance from IRD, and I think the bank's going to discuss their financial assistance later. So if you want more information on any of that, we have created a page. If you Google BDO Cyclone Gabriel, you come up with a page with all the forms of assistance, how to apply for them, and some more detailed articles on income equalisation. Thank you.
Yeah. Any questions for Charles quickly before he disappears?
We're probably, like this implies that they're probably going to spend probably, it could be up to 15 years of capital expenditure. I guess this is going to go down as R&M. What are the tax?
No, not necessarily. If it's fencing, well, yes, fencing, R&M, and that's great because it's fully tax deductible. Also, for orchardists, when they've lost crops, that's a full write-off of that value in the books, so automatic deduction for that as well. So for a lot of these reasons, 2023, 2024 will look a lot skinnier in terms of income, and it'd be good to push that 22 income to those years, not just for the reason of getting a interest-free loan, but for the reason of managing cash flow and potentially reducing tax overall. Any other queries?
Great, so Charles has talked about what help your banks might be able to provide and assistance and support. Who was going to speak on behalf of the banks over there? Andy? Andy, you're standing down here already. Go, man.
Good afternoon, everyone, and it's great to see you all here today. But obviously, it would have been better under better circumstances, of course. But certainly our thoughts go out to you all out there in the rural community. I guess one thing that's just touched on me, just standing here listening today, that there's a real theme here, right? And it's all about we've had a disaster, and it's all about what short-term, mid-term, and long-term support might look like. And from a banking perspective, you know, we're reaching out here to understand, Kiri, what's required. Well, I can tell you what, we are too, because you know, we have customers out there that have got very much short-term, medium-term, and long-term needs. Now, for us, there's some quick fixes for that short-term stuff, but the medium and long-term needs. You know, it's all about giving just a shade more time so everyone can actually, with a clear mind, sit back and have a really good assessment as to what the future looks like with the business, and link up with their bank manager as to how we're going to get there, and what liquidity is going to be required for that to happen. So, time is going to be a bit of a healer here, but at the end of the day, be rest assured we are very keen to sit down with all of our rural customers to understand what those requirements are, so we can come up with an appropriate package that will fit the mould. Chris, I might just
Look, I can't add much more to that. Spot on, good summary. We just need time to get through this thing, and we'll get through it, and we'll help you. So simple as that. But we need time just to analyse the data and go through it.
So I'm Brian McDonough from ANZ. Look, I've come from the Bay of Plenty, and I'm one of many of our staff from around the country that are going to come into the region over the next weeks and months to help get everyone back on their feet. But we just got some assistance in the way of a emergency overdraft, working capital. Look, there's an interest-free sort of short-term period just to help people with their immediate cash flow needs until they can have a bit of a long-term plan, just like these guys are saying. And ANZ's just made a donation of $3 million, and $1 million of that will be going to agriculture, so that should be rolling out through local agencies. And I think 23 of our 27 ATMs on the East Coast are now up and running, so just about got that up and working again.
I suppose just saying, I know that we've been working really hard over the last few days to contact each of the clients that Hayley and Hamish look after. If we haven't, we've tried, find us, and there is immediate packages available to help now, and then the same. We just need to just some time, figure out what our next steps are, and be rest assured that, like all the banks, we're working really hard in the background to make sure that everybody recovers from this. But if you haven't heard from your rural manager, hunt us down, find us. We're working as hard as we can. I've been at council since last week in meetings. We're here for our community, and we want the best for everyone.
Any questions quickly for just rural banking high level at this stage? Because I think it's really important that each of you with your own business, as Kelly quite rightly says, go and have those conversations. But anything sort of high level at this stage? No. Hey, thanks guys. All right, so we're starting to look after keeping the business on its wheels, but for a lot of our people, they only have to look out the office window to see what Gabriel left behind. So from a practical sense, we'll sort of move into what you can do now, bearing in mind again that a lot of these people that you're going to hear from will be giving you those first steps. There's a whole lot to go after that. I keep saying we might have finished the sprint now, but the marathon's just begun. So, covering up some of those scars, Sue Quilter from Ravensdown, she's probably done this presentation far too often in this region, but let's start talking about trying to get some of those scars covered up on our landscape.
Hi guys. As you can see, I've been around here a while, since the 80s, in Gisborne the whole time. Originally I was 10 years with AgResearch, and one of the things I did was after Cyclone Bowler, we did silt revegetation and slip revegetation trial work. And in the many floods since then, and one of the presentations I had to do a few years ago was down in the Manawatu when they had some major floods, and I pulled together some slides of photos we'd taken during Bowler, and I went out and retook those same photos again for that, I think it was about 14 years later. And it just gave me so much confidence that it looks a hell of a mess at the moment, but things do recover, and farming's still here, and people find a way through. And so the silt is actually, all the flats here are fairly fertile, very productive flats, and they've come from a result of floods. So it looks bad now, but it's actually, there is some positives in it. And some of the things I picked up from some of the other floods that we've been through, some tips from farmers, straight from the farmers' mouths. Shade cloth is great for blocking holes in fences. It's light and easy to carry across the country. Sounds like a crazy thing to tell people, but it's easier than a whole lot of netting and standards, and it's fairly flexible. Make sure you use help that is offered. It's easy to say, no, we'll be right, we can sort this. It's too hard to think about how you'd actually get someone to do something. But there's a lot of people offering a lot of help, and even if they're just kicking off the stuff that's hanging on the fences, and every time you drive out your driveway, it looks awful, it pulls you down. Even if they can clear that so things look better for the first 5 minutes that you drive out. Combine with your neighbours, especially for the use of helicopters and fences and things like that. Reseeding, if you're going to be doing anything by helicopter, if you're working with your neighbour, then that can keep the costs down. And sometimes if you've got a big area to do, a plane is going to be cheaper than a helicopter. And that big area might be that you work in with 3 or 4 farmers and get the one plane to do one lot. They suggested retrieving materials before the silt dries, probably getting a bit late now, but just been told to speak up. Retrieve your materials from the silt while it's still damp if you can. It's so much easier than when it dries hard. Consider realistic long-term use of your land that you're looking at before you go ahead and spend a lot of money on it. And that's not just the whole farm, I'm talking about bits within the farm. Helicopter time might be better spent in a few months' time controlling thistles than it is going and throwing seed all over the place. And existing pasture is faster to recover than sown pasture. So if the pasture's there and recovering, don't just spray it all out and start again because you've got some silt in the paddock. Think about whether you really need to do all of that. So those are just the tips, recurring tips that I tend to get after each flood, so I thought they might be useful. If we're talking revegetation of slips and silt, we'll start with the slips because that's almost easier to get over. We did a lot of research after Bowler, and the key is that slips tend to be on the steeper slopes that were poorer producing originally. the slips, and there's two parts of slips, the slip scar and the slip debris. And the slip scar is now steeper than it originally was. So it was the lower performing part of your farm before, and it's going to be the even lower performing now because it's got no organic matter or minimal organic matter, and that's where your moisture holding capacity and all your most of your nutrients were. So it's going to be a hard environment even if you go and sow seed on there, put fertiliser on and get some good growing years, it's still going to be a really low producing part of your farm. So consider whether it's really useful to spend money trying to revegetate that. I tried after Bowler to revegetate some slips up Kiri way. First sowing got washed off a couple of weeks later in another rain event. So that was all that money gone down the drain. We re-sowed it after the slip stabilised a year later, and we got really good germination. Great, just about everything we threw at it. We put heaps and heaps of different species on there, legumes, grasses and herbs, and just about everything struck. And we thought, wow, this is great. A year later, the only two things that were still there producing a reasonable amount of feed were red clover and Lotus pedunculatus. None of the grasses, none of the herbs. This was in a fairly low fertiliser. They got fertiliser to start with, but then only a low rate later. So, and it was fairly laxly grazed, so it wasn't that they were overgrazed. It's just that it's a very hard environment for anything to establish in. All those legumes were treated and coated as well, so it wasn't that they were short of rhizobia. It's just the environment. It's damned hard. So the value in oversowing slips is, unless you want to do it because you want to do something and you're not so worried about the finances, it's pretty hard to justify financially. The other part of the slips is the tailings, and they tend to be 2/3 of the area. So you look at a slip today, it looks very, very like it's all a slip. But those tailings are about 2/3 of most of the slips, and they are a tumbled mess of all the pasture and soil that was above it down there. So now the soil's deeper. And it's also on a lower slope than it originally was on the hill because it's sunk down. So it's got better moisture holding capacity because it's got the organic matter and the extra depth, and it's got good fertility, or it's got all the fertility that was there. It's a deeper soil now, so it could actually, in the long term, produce 30% more than it did originally. So you're actually not necessarily always going to be worse off if you've got slips. Those tailings can improve. The productivity can eventually be better. They will tend to revegetate themselves within 6 to 12 months with what was species were in the paddock because there's all the seed that was already in the soil. And this year, of course, we've got lots of pasture seeding because we've got fairly long pasture, so you'll get the seed drifting into there. So they, on their own, will revegetate themselves within 6 to 12 months. They will, however, tend to have a lot of thistles because now is thistle germination season, and that seed is there already. So you could go out and oversow the tailings. You might get it slightly ahead of when you would have got it naturally, and you might get it with some species that you prefer than what's there. But what is there has taken 100 and something years to develop, and it's acclimatised to your environment, and it's likely that it will take over anyway from what you sow. So you're not necessarily going to gain a lot. My suggestion would be to save your costs for the helicopter that you were going to use to sow your seed and save it for thistle control later. Because even after 14 years, those photos I took after Bowler, 14 years later, all the slip scar areas had significantly more thistle on them than the undisturbed pasture next to them. So if you control those thistles now before they seed, you will minimise that long-term impact of the thistles on those slips. I think that's pretty much. So the key things would be, if you're going to oversow slips, wait till they've stabilised. If you're going to sow, do it before it gets too cool, before mid-May, and be prepared to accept that the costs may be a complete waste of time if you get another heavy rain event. Or if you sow in the spring, that it goes very dry and the seedlings die off. If you are considering it, fertility is usually very poor because you've taken the topsoil off, which is where the fertiliser had landed in the past. So the Olsen the phosphate levels and the sulphur levels are likely to be low, but the potassium's not, so don't chuck potassium fertiliser on it. And they're likely to have a good pH, so you probably don't need to lime them either. Okay, if we're looking at silt, there's a, I think I've got a, if people are wanting info about slip over sowing, I've got some things that were prepared in the previous years, so I've got a few of those. Okay. Right, we've taken up too much time. So the silt. Silt, I have tested every time we've had a flood, I've tested the silt. I can almost guarantee you that it'll be a pH between 7 and 9, very, very high. Do not throw lime on it. It will limit the uptake of certain other minerals. It usually got a very high sulphur level, very, very high sulphur level. That declines usually over a year. So at the moment, the sulphur's not critical, but in the future it will be, because there's no organic matter in that silt and it will not hold sulphur very well. So sulphur's good now, important in the future. They'll have low phosphate levels, usually 5, I've had them down at 4 to 7. So very important to put phosphate in if you're trying to get anything established on it. And potassium is usually very good, so don't worry about potassic fertiliser. So the key for silt oversowing is to assess each paddock, because the depth of the silt will determine whether it's worth trying to plough up and mix it with what's underneath. It will determine what your fertility is likely to be, because if it's only thin and you can cultivate it in, most of it will be at the fertility that the area was before. If it smells, then it's likely to be rotting and you'll have some toxicity issues and the pasture is likely to die or be limited, and also you need to get some cultivation down there to break through that layer of herbage that's underneath the silt. And consider your long-term needs for that site. So best to set up a spreadsheet just on a piece of paper or on your computer, whatever you want, and make a note in each paddock of all those things, and that will help you make some decisions about what you're best to do. It's also a great spreadsheet, a decision tree flow chart that was produced after some floods with lots of experience in here. And this is a really good thing with the depths of silt and what your best options are with that. So again, we've got some copies of that. So find us around here, or I'm happy to email it to you. Cheers, guys.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Sue. A lady with an awful lot of information to share, so by all means hunt her down as you need to. Whenua Māori obviously is a big part of our region, so I've just got Pania King who's going to do a couple of minutes very quickly to those folk. And then we're going to roll into those suppliers that are probably going to become points for donated goods. So they're down to 2 minutes each, I promise you that, because I can smell the steak too. Pania, go. Yeah, I'm going to be timing you, girlfriend.
Kia ora te whānau nā hau e whān, nā mai haere mai. First of all, whenua Māori, if you have any questions or queries to come and see me. Whenua Māori advisor for beef and lamb. And I have one of our farmer councillors in the room, Sue. Kia ora, Sue. Sandra, sorry. Kia ora, Sandra. Beef and lamb are going to be setting hui around Tairawhiti to help obviously fill out the funding forms and just listen to your story and your journey for what has happened through this adverse event. We've been out on the ground as part of the rural hub with civil defence throughout the last, I don't know, I've lost track of the days. And also, we don't want to forget, we've got farmers and growers in the room, but we don't want to forget our other industries that are here, like the shearers and the shearing contractors and so forth, because the runoff effect from our farms being impacted is they have no mahi. So we don't want to forget about them as well. And so if you can't find us, our supporting industries like MPI and so forth are there. RST, we're here for your wellbeing. The Rural Support Trust and our trustee for Tairawhiti is here as well, Patrick Willock. call the 0800 number. I know most of you actually have my personal number because you've been calling while we're still in a state of an emergency instead of recovery, but that's us in Tairawhiti, we're proactive as. So yeah, ka pai to all of you. The task force screen hasn't been announced yet because we're still in the state of emergency, but once that's announced, the mahi on the ground will kick off. It's 2 minutes. So if you need my help and support, if you can't find Sandra and everyone else, please reach out and we'll be there to help you. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Pania. This girl's been in a helicopter pretty much all week. How she's still standing up straight, I have no idea. Okay, so those companies that... Crikey, that sounds like a big one. So those companies that are going to become the hubs for donated goods and starting to, as we build that coordination for the support coming into the region and what is needed out on farms. For today, I've got Farmlands and PGG in the room. So Jamie Haywood and Dolly from Farmlands. Where are you guys? Come on up. Yeah.
I feel it's important because it was mentioned at Monday's meeting.
Yeah.
Just with regards to any of the businesses who have full-time staff.
Come down.
And they've
Come. Okay, I'm just going to let these guys speak quickly while Kelly's making her way down here, and then we'll kick on from there. I'll let that guy go.
Ngā mihi mahana kia koutou. Thank you, Sandra, for giving us this opportunity to speak to our farmers. I'm Dolly Halley, Central East Regional Manager for Farmlands, and I just wanted to give you a briefing of what your cooperative is doing for you right now. So our main focus has been on our people. That's providing financial support, providing food parcels. I'm getting distracted, sorry, I see some people that know me in the crowd. And water. So currently in our branches now there's 12,000 litres of clean, fresh water sitting there for our communities. There's 12,000 litre water tank also sitting down in Waidel to support that community. And also an initiative that Farmlands has put together, your shareholders, around our network. We have a Cyclone Relief Fund that's happening right now. And so your fellow farmlanders have contributed to that fund $200,000 already. Now part of that $200,000, $50,000 has gone to the East Coast Support Trust. So that's working for us right now, as well as providing support in Northland, which has been heavily impacted, and of course Hawke's Bay. So right now, as you're working through the assessments of your farms, we are ready. We've already got in our stores right now emergency fencing, portable fencing, ready to go. We have more containers coming in for your requirements, and of course we've got our sales team on the ready to help you through this as well. So our next steps are to help be part of the rebuild of our area here, and I can be contacted if you need to, and I'll be over here quite often. So as your cooperative, we've been working hard right from the get-go. So happy to support you in any way that we can.
Water reticulation and stock water.
Sorry?
Water reticulation pipes.
Yep, so Sandra's just kindly reminded me. So currently we already have culverts sitting in our stores ready to roll as you need them. Reticulation, water reticulation, all of that is there right now. So if you need support in any way, our sales team who is here will circulate through, get in contact with our people, and we will help as best we can. So, kia ora koutou.
Thanks. Right, guys who don't know me, I'm Jamie Haywood from Wrightson. Like everyone, we've been pretty impacted as well, trying to get supplies here. Roading network's sort of been an issue. Main focus has been the reps getting round to identify what's going on, what our clients need. As she said, get in touch with us, we'll get out and help you as much as we can. The main thing is getting all the supplies back in, and the seed's going to be a big thing going forward. So come and see us for seed. As Sandra said, we're going to try and work together, and our thing's going to be trying to be on seed, and farmlands are going to try and do reticulation so we can all work together. On the other side of things, I'll talk probably as a group on behalf of all the meat companies, all the transport operators. We had a bit of a meeting this morning that those who could make it, and we're obviously trucking, as Dave said, roading is going to be a major issue. We've got major issues with plants that can't operate for varying reasons, be it water or power. So logistically wise, I think all the truckies, we're going to have a coordination centre. So as normal, just contact your normal carrier, contact your agents. But we're going to need, logistical wise, to get some stock out of here at the moment to these faraway plants. We could lose trucks for 2 to 3 days. So we need a lot of notice. You might have a local carrier, but you might see another truck coming up your drive. But that's just the way it's probably going to have to operate. We want to keep as minimal amount of trucks on the roads, and we might have to, we're going to have to coordinate our friends in Wairoa and maybe far south as Tūtira to bring livestock this way to make it work until we get some roading issues going. But that's about it. If we can, just keep in contact, plenty of notice so we can organise trucking in and out. And just carry on talking to your local carrier as normal, and we'll do the coordination from there. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. So that's some of the practical stuff. Now, the rest of it is around your animal health. We need to be looking after them as well. So the vets, I know, have been coordinating pretty much from day one. So Johnny Meeben is going to just give you a quick heads up about what's happening in that space. You know who to reach out to. You know who your advisors are. But John, do you want to just have a very quick let us know what's been happening across the vet industry within our affected regions?
Thank you, Sandra. 2 minutes.
2 minutes, man.
2 minutes. Oh. Sue stole all my time. Good afternoon, everyone. Basically, I think it's really important to prioritise things, be proactive and have a plan. And that plan will both be short-term, medium and long-term. I don't know if you've heard of a thing called the Eisenhower matrix, which is along the top line you've got important and unimportant things, and down the other side you've got urgent and non-urgent. You should be living in the important and urgent area, and maybe a little bit in the not important but urgent, and then delegating everything else. But if you go to Google and look up the Eisenhower matrix, there's some good information there. Probably one of the main things that we need to think about is access to clean water. If you can't drink it, your animals are probably not going to do very well on it either. So there's a lot of silt, things like people who've got reticulated water systems that have been flooded. There could be silt in your troughs, so you might have to think about cleaning those out. And long-term, looking at securing a water supply and even, developing a water system for the years ahead. Also, stock needs shelter and shade. These are more important in the, immediate, during the event type of thing. Move to higher ground. I think you need to, one of the first things that should be in the urgent and important section is update your feed budget. Make sure that the feed that you're feeding animals is not contaminated with silt, because there could be all sorts of things in that silt, bacteria, toxins, if you're further down on the lower country. Maintaining a buffer of supplementary feed. As a result of, that supplementary feed can come in handy because we also have droughts, not only just flood events. The feed budget will determine whether or not you can, what sort of stock carrying capacity that you will be able to maintain. luckily at the moment there's a lot of grass around, but it tends to be getting poorer in quality. Some of your options, if you have to destock, if you've got killable stock, get rid of them as fast as you can. Obviously there are challenges there with the works not all being opened and roading infrastructure and bridges. Looking for grazing elsewhere or buying in feed. Easy said, but not necessarily easily done. I suppose one of the things you should be focusing on at this time of the year is getting down to your winter stock numbers as soon as possible. We don't know what's ahead of us. I think it would be wise to think about, you know, how you're going to get through the winter and what to do in that area. Part of the feed budget is looking at how much of your pasture has been damaged, how big the areas of slipping is, and what your final carrying capacity is likely to be. I just want to update you on product availability. COVID's had a real impact on availability of a lot of animal health and animal remedies. This has been complicated by Boehringer Ingelheim pulling out of the sheep market and stopping local manufacturing. The remaining suppliers have not been able to scale up quick enough to fill that void. So there are some challenges there. Post-Gabriel, transportation is improving, but it's still unreliable. If you're proactive and get on to whoever your provider is and order in advance, or help them out by forecasting what your needs will be going forward, it will help a great deal. Yeah, so some of the things I think we need to really, that we're seeing at the moment, obviously very high fly challenge in a lot of places, and people haven't got water, so they're looking for spray-on options rather than the dipping type products, and yeah, supply of that is pretty tight at times. The most recent spore counts that we've done have unfortunately risen. On the Gisborne Flats, 210,000 in one area and 66,000 on another area of the same farm. 20 to 30,000 is we advise to intervene, and over 100,000 is considered dangerous. Things to look out for are animals separating themselves away from the mob. It's an indication that they're under stress or in poor health. Some of the things we're expecting to see is a higher incidence of losses through viral pneumonia. The last 12 months to 18 months have actually been a nirvana for parasites as well. So, you know, one of the things that you can't really afford to do at this time of the year is stretch out your drenching intervals. If you can keep them to that 28 days in your younger non-immune animals, that's really important. Another thing that we want to look out for is, apart from Sandra sneaking up on you, is salmonella. Possibly we might see a higher incidence of salmonella in our ewe flocks with animals under stress. The other nasty is leptospirosis. It's a waterborne animal, waterborne bacteria, sorry. You can pick it up out of the environment, so attend to you know, personal hygiene when you're working in amongst that silt and things. There's really good information on the WorkSafe website about lepto. Beef and Lamb Knowledge Hub is also another really good source of information around flooding events. The other thing I suppose you have to keep up to date with NATE. I think there's a little bit of slack in that system in terms of not having to report as quickly as you normally do, but don't let that one slip. Keep your routine treatments up to date if possible, and the other thing is look after yourselves and each other. When you get on an aircraft, the first thing they do is tell you to put your own oxygen mask on first, so make sure you're all looking after yourselves.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate that. And yep. Yep, very quickly. It's got to be 1 minute.
Just in terms of animal health stuff, so we're working closely with the vet clinics and New Zealand Veterinary Association. We already know that there's an increased incidence in fly strike, and so if there are any issues around people not being able to get vet meds, to let your vet clinic know, and we will get it through the NZVA, we'll fly the stuff in here. So we've already done that with Wairoa, particularly with some of the dairy herds in there and having to dry them off, right? So any of those sort of issues, we can deal with those within that sort of crisis management side of things. So just talking to your vets, letting them know what you need. If there's issues, we'll fly the stuff in, okay?
Excellent to know, thank you. Okay, very quick note about staff.
Hi everyone, I just thought it would be handy to know because Pioneer King, when she spoke earlier about having sharing gangs, that there are crews of people and groups of people unable to work currently because no one's able to do anything. Work and Income were at the meeting on Monday at Riversun. They have 2 members of staff down at the Trust Tairāwhiti Shed 3, and they are asking all businesses with a permanent employee or more than to come down and register the details. There is a Cyclone Winds income salary package. I don't have the details of it, but there is a wage subsidy for cyclone affected people that are in employment. Go down. You're the best people to give them the information they need because you will have their account numbers, their IRD numbers, your payroll. You yourself might qualify for it as well. It is a one-stop shop. I cannot express how important that survey is. It will take you 3 minutes to fill out. Please fill out that survey that they're asking. MPI's website has links to the grant information, to WINS information. It is all there. Please just go and look for it. But I know that money is important right now to everybody, and you can help your staff without digging a deeper hole for yourself by getting in touch with WINS. Thank you.
Really good point. Okay, we're going to wind this up. Peter Andrews, again, another one who's probably done this presentation far too often. Yeah, thanks, Peter.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Sandra. And look, it's been a great afternoon, really, and there's been lots of good oil that's already been spread. Yeah, look, it's been tough having that them two cyclones rolled out at you, and it must be pretty damn depressing walking around in that silt and picking up fences that you picked up only a little while ago. But I think a lot of the guys have sort of covered some of that stuff around just getting a really, I'm really super supportive of doing the right stuff and making sure that you've got a plan, that you prioritise, that we look back on, reflect on stuff in the past. It's been, the top guys have been those guys who have been working consistently on the right sort of stuff, They're picked out of all of the jobs that are out there every day, and they're saying, hey, I've got all these things, but boy, that's the one I've got to do, I've got to ring the bank manager, or I've got to do that, and I think that's just the key thing amongst all the silt and other distractions that you've got out there, to make sure that you keep thinking around, hey, is this the right job for my business? Is this the right job for my family? So that's sort of one of the bigger things there. Family is big in this. Don't forget to, just as quickly as you have goals around recovery of the silt, family recovery is just as important. Get to those sports games if you can. All of that stuff is just as important as putting that fence back up, building your family and looking after them in that bigger picture. As you guys, as Sue said before, a lot of that stuff, time heals, and I've been there with Bowler and Rob as well, Rob Hayes for MagFirst. It's amazing how quickly it actually doesn't look so bad, and time will heal and we'll be able to move on and be better. Look, we're there, Ag First, to support. We've got Shanna's over here. She's into all of the forms and all of the recovery opportunities that there are. But we're just there to help you guys and be there, supportive in the background, and do whatever we can. Good luck. Go for it.
I'm just going to flog this for 5 seconds on behalf of us. A lot of us were locked in roads. A lot of us couldn't get food. A lot of us couldn't get fuel or gas. Didn't have power or Wi-Fi. And there were people who were on this side of bridges and all sorts, who put in massive efforts getting stuff out to us, who sometimes put themselves at risk. I'd like us all to put our hands together and say thank you to those people. To MPI who have moved really quickly on this funding, to obviously our local MP, to all the people who were in those civil defence officers. It has been a massive effort. It's not over. This is an emergency meeting. A lot of us are already in recovery mode. My challenge is we need another one of these meetings when we're in recovery mode, because there are some big conversations to be had. It's not the time for them, but that time will come. Thank you.
So Rural Support Trust has been mentioned more than once this afternoon. You'll all know Patrick Willock. They do have some really good people standing up around them.
Okay, thanks Sandra. There's been a lot of talk today about the practical things of getting over. One of the telling things that John Meeban mentioned was if you see an animal away from its neighbours, then it's under stress. Well, the same thing is for your neighbours. For your neighbours. Keep an eye on your neighbours, talk to them, and if you find that they are withdrawing and not facing things very well, like Peter Andrew, I've been through these things since before Bowler, and sometimes you see people wandering around and they can't make a decision about what to do. So keep an eye on your neighbours. The mental wellness thing is something that the Rural Support Trust is deeply involved in, and we've got the ability. There's an 0800 number, and it's highly confidential, so nobody apart from the person who's answering knows anything about it. So I've got my fellow trustee Hamish Cave here with us, and we have just got, starting on the 6th of May, is our Rural Support Coordinator, 6th of March, Vicky Croswell. We'd like to stand up. Vicky is highly experienced in trauma and mental health. So for goodness sake, if you see your neighbours in trouble, or if you are in trouble, if you'd like some help, get onto the 0800 number. It's in Matt Cairns' thing that you'll all be getting. So yeah, just go for it. You were pleased I didn't come up with any notes.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, so that's the end of our formal speakers. I did want to just acknowledge the councillors in the room, Colin Older and Rob Telfer. They're both here. So if you want to talk to them about council stuff, by all means, collar them. So I'm just going to round it up. I'm going to let Kiri close the meeting out, and because she's got to get on a plane. For the rest of you, please look after each other, focus on the little things, fix what you can that day, don't look at the whole big mess, okay? So, Kiri, I'm going to leave you to close it, and then please come and find everybody that has spoken to you this afternoon.
Let's put our hands together a little bit for old Sandra, because she's been doing an awesome job. And yeah, just the incredible leadership across region. I just kind of want to make sure it's really clear as clear. We're in a rolling mall with dishing packages out the door. What you've seen this week with that 50 mil announcement, 25's gone into ag and hort. That's really growers and on-farm focus. There's another 25 that'll be announced. Well, it's out, but we'll be saying a little bit more on that this ASAP. But that's business. And so for those of you that you're running crews that you're not necessarily, processors, etc., it's a lot broader. Again, that's just your initial dose. Don't stress out that this is kind of the last measure. It really won't be. We've got a big task ahead of us. Anyway, have a good feed tonight. I know that the other thing that's probably really at the forefront of my mind, and I was just touching base, is just around next week, folks might start to hit a bit of a wall. As old mate over here says, everyone's going to be running on adrenaline a little bit for now, but walls might start to be hit at different times. Last thing, that the worst outcome for our region is that people don't know that there's got plenty of support here in region at every single level to have your back as we get through the next period of time. So look, we'll probably have a little bit more to say on that, some kind of bespoke measures that we can chuck together for you guys, by you guys, for you guys, to get through a bit of a tough time, because, you know, that's the reality of the time that we're living in at the moment. Anyway, have a good feed. Thanks for coming out. Really appreciate it.